Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, and when I'm not causing nearby cameras to glitch out, I'm here at the Wolfula, quote-unquote, reviewing movies. Who would have guessed that Ahhctober 2013 would last until January 2014? Well, in this, the final installment of Ahhctober the 3rd, I gotta check out Freddy's Second Coming and the Nightmare on Elm Street remake of 2010. First things first, though, let's take a look at the film that started it all in '84. The original Nightmare on Elm Street by Wes Craven tells the story of a group of 80s teenagers that are stalked and killed by a psychopath, but in their sleep. The psychopath in question here is Freddy Krueger, the burn victim with the razor glove and a penchant for calling people bitch. Robert Englund played Freddy in every film and TV appearance leading up to Freddy vs. Jason. Though the original film's Freddy wasn't the wisecracking, scenery-chewing Freddy we all know and love today, this Freddy was only partially scarred and spent most of his screen time in the shadows. What little dialogue he did have was creepy, not funny, and whispered, not yelled. Nightmare on Elm Street the First was purely a horror movie. Though, I don't feel like the first Freddy film has aged as well as Halloween or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Mostly because of some of the effects, and it's hard to not snicker seeing a guy who can control dreams just tackling people. And sort of struggling at it too, I might add. Still, it's a quality horror movie, and a classic, even if it does have some silly moments. Okay, fast forward 26 years and a remake seems likely. Who gets to remake Nightmare on Elm Street, you wonder? Platinum Dunes, of course. Okay, red flags are raised. Hey, but they did get Jackie Earle Haley to play Freddy. Not only is he Academy Award nominated, but he's also Hollywood's go-to creepy guy. I mean, just look at him. Couldn't you just picture him driving in a van and killing kids? How can this remake possibly fail? Let's watch, I guess. The film begins on a dark and stormy night. I can see that the writers of this film were obviously influenced by the works of Snoopy. At the creatively named Springwood Diner, some guy who looks like a part-time model requests another round of coffee. This order is ignored by the waitress present.
Where you going?
Instead of assuming she needed to use the restroom or had to replace her hearing aid batteries, the man decides to breach his rights as a patron by following the waitress into the kitchen of this spooky, poorly lit, empty diner. I mean, if he really wants coffee so bad, there's a Starbucks on every street corner. It's a bad sign when a place is on fire and the edges of your vision become as blurry as an old porno tape. Oh, I get it. Claw glove means nightmare. Wow, 4 minutes into this movie and there's already a jump scare. This should bode well. Dean here returns to reality, which isn't really different from the nightmare, except it's better lit in the diner and there's better service. I really hope Freddy's got some more imaginative dream worlds in store for us than that. The great thing about this diner is that it has most of the main characters hanging out in it at the same time, coincidentally. A diner full of teenage future victims isn't as great as a van full of them, but it's almost as good. Dean discusses the nightmares he's been having with his girlfriend, Chris.
Okay, Dean, listen to me. They're just dreams. Okay, they're not real.
These dreams, they're real.
They're not.
They're real.
If this is a date, it's not going smoothly, I'll tell you that much. While not paying attention, Dean winds up in Freddy's scary red and green lights nightmare world. Fred's had enough of the foreplay and finally takes action.
You're not real. You're not real. You're not real. I am now.
Wow, that sounds like something Batman would say. Freddy forces Dean to stab himself in the neck with a knife. Doesn't Freddy have a glove with a bunch of knives on it he could have used instead? At Dean's premature funeral, Chris sees a little girl, which is scary enough by itself, but this little girl happens to have Freddy's signature on her out of nowhere. Okay, seriously, another jump scare? I just like to state that jump scares aren't scary. They're just annoying. A jump scare is just a moment of silence followed by a sudden loud noise that startles you. You can see them coming from a mile away in a horror movie just because of all the silence. It's the cinematic equivalent of somebody jumping up behind you and saying boo. Anyway, Chris goes on and on about how Dean was murdered or something to her ex-boyfriend Jesse, who's pretending to care.
It was like somebody was making him do it, but there's nobody there.
The only person that believes Chris is her friend Nancy, who is the only character in this movie besides Freddy that has the same name as a character from the original, though with a different last name for some reason. Who knows? Maybe they changed Freddy's last name to Krueger.
No, you're not going out on a high note with me, Mr. Krueger!
It's Krueger!
Jesse tells Nancy to fuck off. Later that night, Nancy dozes off for a bit, allowing Freddy to demonstrate his scary power to control condensation. Oh my god, that CGI looks so fucking fake! This effect was so much better in the original. How did they manage to make a movie made 26 years earlier look cutting edge in comparison? It's all about subtlety, folks. Meanwhile, Chris is doing some investigating in her creepy attic to find pictures of herself as a child, because at the funeral she saw a creepy picture of her with Dean as children, but doesn't remember knowing him that young and wants to find more photos. Though this information is all irrelevant because all you need to know is that she's a teenage girl in a horror movie, and teenage girls in horror movies go into creepy attics alone because that's just what they do. In said attic, she finds a box of precious keepsakes like a dress covered in knife tears. There are precious memories attached to that. The lights go out suddenly, and I think we all know what to expect next. Freddy's mouth is so scary!
Remember me?
I don't think she got to the box with your pictures yet, Freddy. The next day at school, Chris isn't paying attention during class. This leads to another bullshit nightmare transition when Chris skips ahead through a textbook arbitrarily, discovering creepy pictures and eventually a Freddy glove. Didn't they kind of do this already in Freddy vs. Jason with that magazine that Kia was reading? I don't think you want to homage a movie that came out 7 years before your movie.
Got your nose!
Chris ends up being teleported to Springvale School from Fallout 3, where Freddy's class is already in session.
You really shouldn't fall asleep in class.
Chris plays hooky, but just runs into Lizardface again. Freddy awkwardly sidles up to Chris and is about to get her nose like Kelly Rowland before her, but she just wakes up while making a scene. Freddy knows it's worse to be embarrassed in high school than to be dead. After school, Chris's mom leaves to go somewhere to do something. Chris is alone now is what's happening. House party, maybe? At night, Chris is given another jump scare, this time by Jesse. I seriously hate the whole boy sneaking into a girl's room through the window cliché. Chris is alone. He can just knock on the door like a regular person. Chris and her ex have a heart-to-heart, which reveals that they share the same unconscious encounters with a festive burn victim.
Oh my god. We're having the same dream.
Chris, it's not possible.
It is possible.
It's just a dream, all right?
This leads to them having sex. Maybe. I don't really know. Chris gets up from her cuddling to the sound of her dog barking, so she decides to smartly go out to investigate these sounds alone and without pants. I mean, sure, the character Chris is based on does the same exact thing in the original, but the point is, when you're doing a remake, you have the chance to improve certain aspects of the story, but I guess not trying is good too. Anywho, Chris finds her dog has been petted to death by Freddy, and she runs away again, which has proved effective before. Inside, her house looks a lot like an inner-city school. The little girl version of Chris escorts her back to Freddy, who looks like he's starting to regret being in this movie.
Here I come.
Well, that was a close call for Chris, huh? She gets up and washes her face after that nightmare. She can go back to sleep now and have more nightmares.
Found you.
Didn't see that coming. Freddy kills her, and it's pretty much a less subtle version of the original ceiling murder. It's also kind of funny. Jesse gets out of there in a hurry, but makes sure people see him fleeing the crime scene. Instead of just going home, Jesse pops in on Nancy to tell her there's a dream killer on the loose.
What are you talking about?
Don't pretend like you don't know, because you do. You said it at the funeral. He's the one who's trying to kill us in our dreams.
It's nice to tip her off and all, but this little stop lets the cops catch him covered in Chris's blood. I mean, when you're implicated in a murder, but nobody gets a clear look at you, why would you stop at somebody's house to tell them you were at the crime scene? Why wouldn't you just focus on not getting arrested? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, admittedly.
I didn't kill her! You know! Shut the fuck up!
Nancy informs her pal, Quentin, about these dream slayings. I think he's the Johnny Depp character of this movie. Quentin does a gigablast search for sleep deprivation at a bookstore. Ironically, he falls asleep right there. Since it's another nightmare scene in this movie, it involves the character walking very slowly around until Freddy eventually does a jump scare. It never gets old with this movie. Back to Jesse at prison, his parents have apparently bailed him out. I think this gives away that he's actually having a nightmare. Yep, he's having a nightmare. In the boiler room, Jesse spots Freddy. So there's some running. Until Jesse finds Chris's corpse and presents Freddy with another opportunity to say a Batman/Rorschach style line.
Oh, God. No. Just me.
Freddy messes with Jesse a bit, but then just leaves for no apparent reason. Then there's silence. I think we all know what that means. They should call this Jump Scare the Movie.
I didn't do it! I'm innocent!
So Freddy framed that inmate for murdering a guy he also framed for murder? Weird. Later, Nancy takes a bath because when you're explicitly told that there's a dream killer on the loose, you gotta do some relaxing. This is getting ridiculous. Yes, this happened in the original, but that Nancy wasn't as savvy to the whole Freddy only kills you in your dreams thing. Why would you do something that makes you want to take a nap when you know stuff like this will happen?
Honey, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, Mom.
Oh, I guess the bath scene was just a fake out. Never mind. Okay, yeah, this is definitely a nightmare. You know, classic Freddy would prey on his victims' fears, so is Nancy afraid of snow? Because she doesn't show it. Oh, I see, a flashback. So is this remake Freddy just a pissed-off version of the Ghost of Christmas Past? Frederick arrives and is disappointed that the girl doesn't remember him. I think we can guess why she wouldn't want to.
You smell different.
Nancy is rescued from this awkward moment by a phone call from Quentin about Jesse's death, so it's a mixed blessing. The two get together, and Nancy determines that her mom is hiding something from her involving Freddy in the case of the creepy preschool. So, now that the teen sleuths have their lead, Nancy, Drew, and the Hardy Boys start investigating the house. They discover a photo of them and their currently deceased friends together as children. Upon discovering this clue, Nancy's mother arrives, and boy does she got some splaining to do.
Why would you lie to me?
I didn't lie.
It's right here. Why would you lie to me? Stop lying to me.
I'm not lying to you. I am not lying to you. I'm not lying to you. I didn't want you to have to go through your life with this memory. I didn't want you to remember. I wanted you to forget.
Remember what?
According to the mom's story, Freddy was a gardener at Nancy and Quentin's preschool, much like groundskeeper Willie in that one Simpsons Treehouse of Horror that parodied Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy was very beloved by the children, except for the inappropriate touching. It's okay now, because according to Nancy's mama, the bad man with the claws moved far away. Nancy isn't satisfied by this answer and is about to do some more teen sleuthing, but Quentin's dad, Mr. Krabs, comes by to take his son away from the weird girl. Man, Clancy Brown deserves better than this movie. The next day, Quentin is at his Speedo Club practice meet thing. While swimming, he gets pulled under the water and comes back up in slow motion. Quentin finds himself 95% naked in another one of Freddy's flashbacks. Couldn't Freddy pick a better time to do this? This particular flashback happens to show the fun memory of how Freddy got that rash all over his body.
Damn it! You open this door, Krueger! What do you think I did? I didn't put your ass up! Open the fucking door!
We learn that in this version, the parents didn't even bother dealing with Fred in a courtroom. They just go straight to murdering him.
Our kids get on the stand and have to tell a room full of people what happened to them.
Right, we've got to call the police.
Right.
This is not the way
This
to
ends
do it.
tonight.
Kind of jumping the gun a bit. At least he didn't kill your kids in this version, guys. Right away, at least. So they set his hiding spot on fire. It gets funny when he takes off his jacket to get a little less warm. I don't know who wears a jacket over a sweater to begin with. So, Freddy's dead, but it's not quite the final nightmare. I was really hoping that they'd show those dream demons that look like sperm giving Freddy his powers, but I guess that's just not gritty enough for Hollywood. Elsewhere, Nancy is doing her research into the Krueger case and has found that most of her former peers at Badham Preschool have perished. Even this guy.
Is there anybody else out there that this is happening to? Can somebody help me? Please?
Who uploaded that video? Quentin confronts his dad, Lex Luthor, about the whole murdering Freddy thing. In the middle of this father-son conversation, Quentin claims that Freddy is an innocent man.
How do you know he was guilty?
Oh my God.
You killed an innocent man.
They're really gonna do this? Going for the whole sympathetic villain with Freddy Krueger? Why can't we have anything that's just pure evil these days? Out in the hallway, Nancy starts tripping as she sees awesome images cribbed from the original movie.
Don't you want to hang out, Nancy?
This is a sign that Quentin needs more Hypnosil, or whatever they call the anti-sleep or anti-dream medication in this movie. The dynamic duo head to their local pharmacy for more drugs, but the dealer there won't hook a brother up. While wandering around the place, Nancy winds up in nightmare mode without a boombox in sight. She finds herself switching from nightmare to reality like a channel surfer that doesn't know what to watch. For some reason, Fred tells her to wake up, which she does. Nancy is taken to the hospital and they want to put her under, but she has her reservations. Nancy escapes when they aren't looking, so they have a whole hospital scene for no reason. Well, except it does give Quentin an explanation for where he gets all those adrenaline needles. He offers Nancy a hit, but she declines.
Whoa.
I'm starting to think that Quentin is just a strung-out junkie. He seriously needs help. While driving to someplace, Quentin doesn't see the slow Freddy at play sign and ends up crashing the vehicle. Okay, if you saw a guy who was trying to kill you in the middle of the road, why wouldn't you just try to run him over? This movie is pretty stupid. The two get out of the automobile and discover their old preschool nearby, so I guess they're gonna go in there and hit Freddy with a baseball bat. While taking a walk down memory lane, the young sleuths find a secret passageway. In this old childhood hangout spot, the teens find their final clue, some pictures of Freddy molesting them as kids.
We were wrong. He's not after us because we lied. He's after us because we told the truth.
Okay, I really don't know if I'm totally cool with Freddy being a pedophile. It doesn't make much sense to me, because if you're a child killer, and I hope you're not, it would make sense that you would keep killing children if you lived on through their dreams. If you're a child molester, and I also hope you're not, wouldn't you just keep molesting kids in their dreams? So why is the remake Freddy a pedophile that turns to murder once he gets dream powers? If he's gonna kill anybody, wouldn't it be the parents for keeping him away from his, playmates? Also, if Freddy's a pedophile, why doesn't he have a mustache? So yeah, the kids are pretty disappointed finding out that they're damaged goods. So Nancy formulates a plan wherein she pulls Freddy out of her nightmare so Quentin can take him out in a way much like Jason did before him. Nancy sleeps his plan, but her partner botches this plan when he goes on a snooze cruise himself. Damn it, do you want to end up as a stain on the ceiling? Quentin gets a thrashing, but is spared when Freddy gets bored and attends to Nancy. Freddy has some serious ADD.
Now that you got me, what game do you want to play next?
Fuck you.
Ooh, sounds like fun.
Nancy manages to cop a feel on Freddy and then does some running until she finds a nice closet to hide in. If Leslie Vernon is anything to go by, she should be safe. Well, I guess closets aren't jump scare proof. More running ensues until Nancy finds herself in the hallway of the Overlook Hotel. Then she Johnny Depps her way into a bed while donning a dress from her childhood. What parent in their right mind in the 1990s would dress their kid like this? It's pretty much creepy uncle bait. Freddy tries to get Nancy in the mood, but I just don't think she's into it. In reality, Nancy's screams finally end Quentin's impromptu slumber and allow him to rouse her from hers. Too bad it's about as easy as waking up a Snorlax. So, in lieu of a poke flute, he instead wakes her up using the Pulp Fiction method. Thus, Freddy is dragged into reality. Now that the playing field is leveled, there's some fighting that eventually leads to Fred losing his favorite hand.
It hurts, doesn't it? It's because you're in my world now, bitch.
They just couldn't resist the urge, could they? Now that Freddy is dead with total finality, the kids need to dispose of his corpse instead of bringing it to the police and maybe allowing scientists to perform studies on it. Since they don't have dynamite, they opt to instead burn his body, because that worked out really well the first time. The authorities arrive, and the kids really have a lot to explain for committing the serious crime of arson. This never comes up, though. And so, Nancy and her mother return home with the daughter finally understanding why her mother lied about being an accessory to the murder of a gardener that molested her as a child.
I know you were just trying to protect me. Thank you. I'm just glad you're safe.
Okay, that was kind of cool. So, that was, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 remake. Really didn't like it. Thought it was pretty stupid. Everything that's supposed to generate a reaction of fear is telegraphed. Predictable. The twist to this remake's version of the plot is gross and confusing instead of scary. So Freddy's a pedophile instead of a child killer. Great. Awesome. This stuff doesn't hurt nearly as much as how disappointing Jackie Earle Haley's performance was. He's a great actor, but it feels like he wasn't trying at all here. When they show Freddy, he usually just stands there without emotion in his face while staring out into space. Wow, that rhymed. It's not like I expected Haley to outdo England or anything. I just expected him to offer a good performance. But he just didn't. And it was the only thing I thought would be good about this movie. I give A Nightmare on Elm Street a pedophile out of child killer. Ever play Skin the Cat?